in the Canvas course. And just remind you that the expectation is that you respond to two other colleagues so that, we can actually learn from each other and, pay attention to the other people's experiences in the course. Uh, the other thing is, in the announcements, I've actually posted exemplary work. And the reason I'm doing this is I think some people have a difficulty in responding thoroughly to the responses in the prompt and then to other people. So one sentence or two sentences is just not enough. This doesn't really show that in some ways, that I've been clear enough with you to say that your responses have to be both thorough and thoughtful. Even in the standards for high school students, it always says, you know, why are you making this statement? Use evidence for your justification. What reasons do you have? So it's always why. So putting two sentences in as if you're responding to, a prompt or to other people, is just not quality work. And so when you have an incomplete, I'll actually say, please go back and redo this. So if you have incompletes and you don't go back and correct what you've done, then the challenge ends up being, did you actually complete the course based on the expectations? And part of that, again, I take full responsibility for not being clear, but I keep on writing the same thing, generally to the same people. So, in the announcements, there'll be examples of exemplary work, exemplary responses. The same thing with the Zoom log from last year. There were just really exemplary work in relationship to, what each person was learning on the Zoom calls. So I'm happy to see Bev here because, she's directly connected to a district and has experience being in IEP meetings and other meetings where the standards are really immediately relevant. So I'm going to share the screen. We're going to finish the standards the way we've done before. And you can put your questions in the chat. And I think Bev will monitor that for me. So I appreciate that, Bev. This is our last Zoom meeting. And so it's important, again, this idea of working at least weekly on the Canvas course. And the reason I'm asking you to do that is, I'll do module 1 and then respond to everybody. And then I'll move on to module 2. Then people who haven't done anything in module 1 email me and ask me if I've seen their responses. Well, this puts me in an awkward position because I have to keep going back to module 1, and so it's really important to try to, make weekly progress on the Canvas course in a very thoughtful way. Otherwise, I continually end up going to module 1, module 1, module 1, module 1, spending hours on module 1 when people are already on module 3. Then they ask me, have you seen my work on module 3? Well, I haven't even finished module 1. There are almost 150 people registered in the course. So, it takes me a while to get through it and then make responses. And some of the responses that you've done have been really enlightening. They've been, very powerful, and they're from all over the state. And we should be proud of that. I mean, that's the whole point of the work that we're doing, is to engage families, especially when there are so many strange things going on in the country that ends up not being very supportive to any of us. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll finish up the last standards. So can you actually see standard 6, everyone? Yes, thank you. So this is accountability, which I think is interesting because it goes back to some of the questions that people were previously asking about how accountable, should interpreters feel. So the ethical principles are interpreters are responsible for the quality of interpretation. Okay, so the goal is you're responsible for the quality of interpretation, right? It's not about what the administrator does, what the administrator says, what the families are confused about. Okay, it's not about that. You're accountable for the quality of your interpretation. And whatever support that we can provide you when Bev and I start working on a toolkit to send out to you so that you'll feel better prepared. And again, you have all these really interesting objectives. Responsibility for quality interpreters' work. And again, maintaining role boundaries and standards. So, we've gone over most of the standards and the objectives, the ethical principles. Um, and last week we really talked about these boundaries so that, you know, you're not inordinately stressed out because you feel like you're obligated to take a position. That doesn't actually respect the boundaries of your role. So, again, the whole issue is how you're interpreting what's being communicated by the administrator to the family. Uh, I think that this also helps clarify some issues about that, you identify and correct interpretation. If there's an error or there's some confusion about the Spanish, it's important to clarify with the family, first of all, um, I'm a little confused. Is this what you mean? And again, declining assignments that either require, uh, okay, wait a minute, Bev. Uh, if there are assignments that require knowledge or skills beyond your competence. And that's why, in the Canvas course, it's asking you, based on the standards, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses? And why do you feel that way? So if you're not identifying your strengths and your weakness, how can you actually fulfill the standard? Okay, Bev.
And actually, one of the things that I wanted to say from a district level, we appreciate under knowing that if an interpreter says, I'm not sure I'm quite ready for that, that adds a whole new layer of respect and value to what you bring to the table. So I just wanted to let you know that it's not going to be a detriment like, oh, they're never going to call me again to interpret. No, that means that you really value and care for that role that you play, and it's not seen as detrimental from at least our district perspective.
Thanks, Bev. I think it goes back to this idea of what professionalism is. There are often times when I get these really kind of off the wall strange messages from people at USBE who are my colleagues. And sometimes I don't even know who they are. They're like brand new people, which is fine. But then they're asking me things like, uh, you know, legislators don't know how to call students, um, and they don't know how to label students. And I'm thinking, okay. And then so I go to ESSA and it's English learner. It's not English language learners. It's not LEP. I go to the board rule. It's students learning English. So, I try to communicate in a way, and if I don't know the answer, it's not a weakness. It's something that I can look up and then feel, that I'm being accountable for the position that I'm in. Even if the questions seem like everyone should know them, this is redundant. How many times do we have to say this? The goal again is really to think about the ways you can acknowledge both your strengths and your weaknesses, and then respond in a way with a sense of integrity. I think this is the thing that's the growth mindset. The growth mindset is always, how can I be better? How can I really show that I'm a professional and I'm committed to being an interpreter, committed to being an ALS director, committed to being the Title III specialist. Committed is like being committed to being a parent. It's kind of the same thing, you know. And because we're always learning, we're willing to admit, well, I have to do this better, and so I don't feel quite qualified in this situation, right? So that's another way to think about it. And then the same thing with the number 30, which is the next objective. Informs the parties, requests direction during an encounter. If it's apparent to the interpreter that expertise is beyond his or her competence. So you can't be like waiting until then the consequences of not acknowledging that you don't feel comfortable ends up being, snowballing. And the consequences ends up being, worse than if you would have said something early on. And again, maintaining your role, your limits, your obligations, being really clear again about those boundaries, and in compliance with legislative requirements, generally accepted standards of profession. So that's why we go through the standards so that you actually have a clear idea, of what your accountability is to the standards. The other thing is HB 302, the I don't know, I was reading again some of the things in Module 1 and Module 2, and many of you were just so thoughtful, and you had no idea how extensive HB 302 is in all these different contexts in education, so that students and their families have a chance to be actually fully engaged in the educational process. And, some people even in the districts have been really clear who are taking this course and then using it with administrators, because in some schools and some districts, the knowledge of HB 302 and the obligations for all the ways in which interpretation has to be done based on state law, after even this was passed in 2022, and there's still people and schools who have no idea. So this is not good. So it's important for you to understand the state legislation. So when you're reading it, and you're thinking about, one of the questions is, how will you explain HB 302 to colleagues? You should think really carefully about your answer, because that's a part of your obligation. You have to know what the legislation is saying. It says compliance with legislative requirements. Well, that's HB 302. And then number 33 is maintains transparency, which I would hope that, other people in my agency were serious about, so that we could actually know what's going on before a board meeting happens. When clarification is necessary, the interpreter says, I, the interpreter, need clarification. Again, this is focusing on your ability to be honest about your strengths and your weaknesses. That's why every single standard asks you the same question. It's a self-assessment. Evaluate your strengths and your weaknesses, and then why do you feel that way, and what will you do about it, right? And again, the last one is the interpreter brings attention of an appropriate person, any circumstances or condition that impedes full compliance, including, again, this goes back to this thing about conflict of interest. Or if you're exhausted and people expect, like you're walking out of the building and they're dragging you to a meeting, right? So, I mean, the inability to hear or inadequate knowledge of specialized terminology. It's interesting because I only found out, believe it or not, Bev, that FERPA has been scrubbed from the Department of Education's website. Apparently, there's no more FERPA. which is, this huge issue around student privacy. So,
That is actually shocking and a whole nother conversation that we'll have. But
yes, it is. But I can't remember who the person was wonderful in the course. I think it's in module 3 or something. I don't remember. But she emailed me and she said, the link to FERPA is gone. It's not there anymore. So then I looked at it and that's exactly what it said. So I had to go to a district that had FERPA legislation embedded in its website because it's not on the Department of Education or in the government, federal government. It's been wiped. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not obligated, right, to ensure student privacy and confidentiality. Yes, you are. And even though, we can't really find it on government websites or the Department of Ed, or, that because that's where I put it. I thought the Department of Ed last year, well, the Department of Ed last year had the FERPA legislation on it. It doesn't now. So, any questions about accountability before we go to professionalism? And remember, this is supposed to alleviate you from anxiety. You should be treating yourself well and not making excuses when, you feel overwhelmed or overcome or you have a conflict of interest. It's just a level of integrity, and protecting your own role as an interpreter. Okay, let's go to standard 7, professionalism, which, is in some ways it's a repetition of all the things that we've talked about. But it's, about looking at the ethical principles and at all times being a professional, which is, consistent with the standards, the professional standards, and the protocols and procedures that are established by your district or, whomever that you're interpreting for. And again, it says, which I like, this idea of performing your duties, as unobtrusively as possible, because you're not, and this alleviates you from anxiety. You're not the center of attention. That's not, I mean, that's not your role. What you're doing is you're interpreting so that the communication has the highest quality from the person who's facilitating, the educator, the teacher, whoever it happens to be, and the family for the sake of the parent and the child, right? And if there's confusion, then obviously you're going to ask for clarification. Again, completes assignments. So all this is just really pretty obvious. Um, if they notify you, you have to be clear and ask them exactly the time that you have to be there, where it is, when it is, you know, um, and then you stay there until uh, the meeting ends, right? So, and again, dressing appropriately um, for face-to-face encounters. Um, I mean, we even get these emails from USBE, and if there's a Zoom meeting or whatever, we're expected to dress as a professional. I mean, that's just obvious. I think that's an obvious thing that, if you have a profession and you're doing a face-to-face encounter, which usually meetings happen even on Zoom, then you're dressing appropriately when it's an official meeting. And again, does not conduct personal or other business while on an interpreting assignment. And I don't even see how this could actually happen. I mean, how would you, uh, when you're doing an interpretation assignment, like, are you on your phone? I mean, I don't know. This seems like, again, really obvious. Um, Creating a work environment conducive to performing interpretation, even if it's over the phone. Right. So if it's over the phone, you're asked to do it over the phone, then you're not, um, drinking a cup of coffee or, eating a sandwich or something like that. You're paying attention to the interpretation because that's your professional obligation. And if you don't have time to do it, then you just say you don't have time to do it. Okay, let's look at I think that's a pretty obvious one. Let's look at standard 10. Now, this is one of my favorite ones because I really believe that we're all learning together. That's why, when your responses to other people in the Canvas course are so thoughtful and generous, and kind and welcoming, it makes a whole difference of being in the course virtually because someone is actually listening to you and responding to you. So those responses to other people in the course are really valuable. So, we commit ourselves to lifelong learning, um, and it's really about services that end up changing over time, that, you really always go back to the standards, even if you wanted to do, I don't know, Bev, what do you think about this? Like at the end of an experience, there's a debrief about, how do you think this went? How can I get better? What, do you see what I'm saying? Because in most learning experiences, when you actually stand back and kind of debrief and reflect on it, you can always see ways that you can either improve or ways that you can get feedback on whatever it is you're doing. Whether it's interpreting or whatever. Bev?
So this is part of mini district. They have a feedback and reflection cycle. And so it's about using that quote unquote data to think about where you've been, to adjust your performance moving forward. And I think that's a really critical part of everything that we do, especially and also interpreting, uh,
Mhm.
just to make everything better and more professional.
Yeah, and if we're willing to say that we're a learning community, then we should be open to feedback. And I'm not talking about open to criticism. That's not what I'm saying. But feedback is a way in which, we end up uh, getting what's in our best interest in relationship to us doing better work. It's the same thing with giving feedback to students. You know, I don't know if people still do this, but well, maybe they do, but I have no idea. I never did this. Take a red pencil and mark all over the essay. Okay, well, that's pretty demoralizing. It's better to have a conversation with a student and then focus on, what really is interesting, what they can do better, um, and what they need to know more about.
And
How, go
and
ahead.
talking about that reflective feedback cycle, districts also need that. And I think I'm talking about if you're part of that cycle and you're reflecting and you're really trying to look at self-evaluating, like what do you need from us as a district? So I think that's really critical, and being able to take multiple experiences and then present, hey, you know what? This is not going well when I interpret in your district. Here are some things that we might be able to do, or things that would make it better. Those things are really, really important to share with the, not just the families, but especially the districts. Because we don't know what we don't know. So that helps us a lot.
Yeah, and I think keeping notes, like a reflective journal on your experiences, especially related to the standards, because that would give you more validity in saying, well, we had this course, I'm certified, and this standard, it's very clear what it's saying, but I don't feel like we're getting to this. So, how can we work together to make this happen? So it's more feedback, but it's like this joint experience of you knowing the standards so well that you want to make the experience of interpreting, at a high level of excellence, which then makes a difference because then you don't have people being defensive. Because then you don't want people, you don't want people to be defensive when you're suggesting things that would make the entire experience better for everybody. And again, the interpreter takes available courses. Well, you're all here doing that. And many of you have been, showed a lot of interest in the advanced course. There are a couple of people already who have finished it, the 40-hour course, which is way more intensive than this. And they have just loved it and learned so much from it. So much so that I'm not sure if I told you, Bev, but now there's a waiting list of 97. We have 50 in the course, and now there's a wait list that big. So we're trying to create an amendment to renegotiate the contract so they can accept more people. And the contract is for 5 years. So everybody who's doing the course with me to be like a level 1 certification, if you want to do the advanced course, we know that'll be open for the next 5 years in this contract. And it's specifically for Utah. They're so amazing because they ended up asking me, advice on what could be included in their typical course. And I said, of course, HB 302 has to be deeply embedded in it because this is the implementation of that state law. And they were really good in responding. So Bev, we made a good decision in picking this group. And again, it goes back to this practice of self-evaluation. And I use the word self-assessment. So in every single module I say, please assess yourself. I mean, you're all adults and you're all being very honest. Some of the things that people have said in their self-assessment, is really touching, just so honest and straightforward and thoughtful. And so this gives you an opportunity, to really evaluate your current practice and what you want to do in the future. And again, 46 is about demonstrating, goes back to this thing about demonstrating what it is you've learned from your experiences as well as the standards. So those are all the standards. Do you want to, let's just open it for a minute and I'll finish with this, but does anyone want to ask or make comments about anything that they've learned in relationship to going over the standards, the way we've gone over them, and the questions and experiences people have shared with us? Okay, doesn't seem like anything. Let me just say that there was some technical issues. I'm not sure. I think it was from the 19th or something. So then I emailed everybody to make sure that they could replace that Zoom meeting with the presentation that Kim Fratto did on a very important question, which came up last year when somebody was doing an IEP and the parent was asking about extended interventions like after school. And apparently there was some confusion because what got translated or interpreted from the person who was leading the meeting, the IEP meeting, was that the student wasn't eligible. And the interpreter came to the Zoom meeting and said, well, how can a student who has special needs not be eligible for extra support after school? And so there was this whole kind of confusion about some kind of eligibility requirements, but it had nothing to do with being after school or summer school or anything like that. So Kim Fratto's, PowerPoint presentation, I ended up putting in a link, and I'll put it also in another link so that you can watch that as a replacement. The other thing, the first Zoom meeting that we did, it was only 30 minutes and it was partial. So I'll also give you, you can look at any Zoom meeting from last year as well, because we ended up we did eight Zoom meetings, and I did one in the afternoon and one in the evening. So you have 16 to choose from. And they brought up some really important things. So if you have difficulty with getting the link, because I know there's been some technical difficulties, in the syllabus, it gives you the link to the playlist, and you can just go to the interpreter's playlist and replace whatever you want. So here's the last thing about Module 10. And it's a final self-assessment on the 8 standards. And when it says, please be thorough in your responses, so that's what it means. It means, like, give evidence. You can even use your experiences to say what you did and what you're going to do differently, or what your strength is and how you accomplish that, in an experience you had in a discipline meeting or whatever. And it's only a 1-page essay with 2 questions. Which of the two of the 8 standards do you feel most confident, and why? Now, I always feel it's really important to build on your competency. So if you have strengths, you should be proud of them and you should build on them so that you can support other people that you might be able to mentor. And then on which one standard, you can see that this is kind of a limited way to think about this, because if you focus on a one standard that you need to work on and why, and then you refer to the specific objectives that help you understand why the standard is important for you to work on, then that makes more sense than having, a huge assignment that isn't relevant to you personally. It's supposed to be personally meaningful to you, right? And of course, the Zoom attendance log uploaded, and I think it can be in the assignment section of Module 9 or Module 10. Once we get to that point and you finished, doing really, and the whole attendance for Zoom, the Zoom attendance log is, the goal is like, what did you learn? From the Zoom sessions, what did you learn? What was meaningful to you? See, it's not about summarizing in a way that has no relevance to you. It should be personalized. That's the whole point of learning, right? Is it means something to you. It might not mean the same thing to somebody else, but that's not the point. Or you're trying to figure out what, Christelle wants. Well, Christelle only wants what makes you the best interpreter you can be based on your experiences and what you want for yourself, right? I mean, that's really the whole point of what we're doing. Okay, any questions about the essay?
Well, there is a question in the chat. I am not sure if you've mentioned this or not, but is there a link we could have with the standards and their objectives? I want to print it and have it handy if that's allowed.
I can actually just, well, it's in the syllabus.
Right. I was going to say, I believe if what I think she's, or the comment is referring to is what is projected on the screen right now.
It's in the syllabus. So everybody has the syllabus. If you don't have the syllabus, then you should email me, and then I'll just send this out again to everybody and you can download it, because it'll be right in front of you. What's on the screen is in the I'm just going over the syllabus. That's all I'm doing. I'm sharing what's already been established. So I'll just send it out again as a link and you can download it. How's that? Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing. And anybody who wants to make a comment or ask a question, or share an experience, we still have some time.
I have a question.
Okay.
Once we are certified, and we have our certificate and everything, are we going to have to renew it once in a while, or is this just permanent? Once you have it, you
Yeah,
have it, and
well, you just have it. I mean, there's no way that there would be renewal. The only thing that would make a difference is if you wanted to expand your expertise, right, you take the advanced course. But there's nothing about renewal. I mean, no, you know, neither Bev or I have the capacity to do renewals, especially me. I have like, a full-time job. So does Bev.
Okay. Thank you.
But thanks for asking though. Bev, is there other questions in the chat?
Just questions about the Zoom log, and was talking about, that was one of the first emails from you about the Zoom log and when to turn it in. I'm actually looking to see if I can put a link to that, and
Well, it's in the syllabus, right?
yeah.
So the Zoom link, all you have to do is just do it at the end of the course in module 10. You just upload it, that's all. Ruben,
There, I had to unmute myself. Kind of two questions. One, other than the advanced training, is there any other trainings that you have or that the state has that we could take to kind of continue, especially during the summer when there's no school and we have a lot of time that we can kind of spend some time learning some different things that'll be, adequate for helping us continue to learn uh, educations, the education style.
yeah, actually there's nothing that I know of, especially because the way in which the advanced course is designed for Utah focuses on education. And often courses, even for summer and for, being certified, ends up being medical and legal. And so the whole vocabulary is different.
Yep.
The educational vocabulary really is the thing that's the challenge that we've talked about with all the acronyms in IEPs and even EL, and all of that kind of stuff. So I don't know if that helps, Ruben, but I
Yeah.
don't have any, I don't have any. I wish I could, give you more links to that. But oftentimes, this sounds kind of strange, but if you go to YouTube and you go to interpreters for English learners, not that I mean, sometimes they give you concrete examples. Like I remember one time, it was a little strange. I didn't put it in the course because I was a little offended by it, but um, it was about a discipline issue. And someone has mentioned this before, where the parent was like out of control. And so then there was an issue related to, how do you deal with uh, parents in this situation who are denying whatever the student is saying and whatever the teacher assumes to be true. So those things, I think end up being challenging. And you just have to kind of look at those examples because some of them, are very direct that we haven't really addressed. We've addressed in a general way, but not really specific.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Just one last thing. Is there any openings or any places that you know of that there's any positions available to do interpreting more than just the district when they need IEPs?
Yeah, I really don't know. I think, well, I don't know. I'll just say this, and some of you already know this. The all the funding for um interpretation from like Catholic Community Services, they have no funds to continue any kind of support for refugee families at all because all that funding has been cut. So we're just in a strange kind of historical time, and so the question, ends up being, from my perspective, the best opportunity for interpretation still is in schools, until there's some executive order that says we can't do that anymore. So I don't know. Sorry, Ruben, but good question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bev?
So Ruben, there are still opportunities in the medical sector and through the courts, not necessarily with educational interpreting that is funded for, through federal and state grants for schools, but educational or, excuse me, court interpreting and medical interpreting are still, there are lots of opportunities there, as far as I know.
Yeah, good to know. I did court interpretation in the early 90s, so it's been a minute, but I would love to continue in the schools. And that's why I kind of wanted to see what's going on here, but it's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and there ends up being lots of courses for, use your legal interpretation, and anybody who's had medical interpretation, it's been a while. There are all kinds of courses, but they end up being pricey. That's the other issue. So, other questions? Let's see.
Yes. May I ask a question?
Yes, uh-huh.
Christelle, I'm wondering, do we need to have the course, this elementary course done before we can register for the second level?
Yes. Besides, you'd never get in anyway because the wait list is almost 100 people. So
Okay.
you really should finish this course because it'll give you, the opportunity when we're hoping to do the amendment and add additional funding for this year and next year. So it probably won't even be eligible. It won't even be open maybe until next year until we figure out how to amend the contract because there's so many people already on the wait list.
Okay, thank you.
There's
Oh,
a
you're welcome.
question about, does this course give any credits that count toward college? Are there any college
No.
credit?
No. No college credits. We're having a difficult time actually trying to get it on the Midas system. So educators, and I'm not sure if it's, I've tried to make a case for having paraeducators get Midas credits and have levels of certification. I tried to start that about 10 years ago, but it didn't really get anywhere. But those people who are teachers and in this course, we've had a hard time actually getting the Midas course approved through the kind of bureaucratic system. I had to go in and then change a lot of it and then do a couple of sections. So people who have been teachers and finished in 2024 then can get Midas credits, which is USBE credits toward being certified as a teacher, not as an interpreter, right? But just as an educator. Other questions?
In the chat, once we get our certification, do we need to inform the district or school, or will they be informed?
Okay, they're not going to be informed. You have to do it yourself. So all you do is when you get the certificate, and it does take, it took a very long time, but I think I'm going to have, we had the superintendent, the state superintendent sign it with me. So I signed the certificate and then the state superintendent, and that took a very, very long time. But we're not going to even know who the state superintendent is. So I think probably my signature and maybe the Title I person or the assistant or the new deputy superintendent, because she's pretty quick on the draw and she's been supportive of providing the money for the advanced course. So as soon as you finish, right, and taken care of any incompletes and finished your essay and done your Zoom log and it's, quality work, then you will have earned the certificate. The certificate that you get will say USBE certification for interpreter level 1, and it'll have my signature as well as the deputy superintendent's. So you just show probably the original to your district people or your school people and say that you've gone through this. Many people on this in the Zoom meetings and on the course have already, they were recommended by their districts, and some weren't, because they ended up just having conversations with other people and finding out about it through their colleagues and paraeducators and their husbands and their wives and other and other people, and not district people. So the best thing to do is to actually, when you get your certificate, to go to your school administrator, show them, and if they want a copy of it, make a copy, give it to them, however you want to do it, however they want you to do it. Bev, do you have any suggestions to that, or it just makes sense? Yeah.
I think what you said is great. Each district can kind of do what they want with that. And I think most districts are still in that planning stage of, okay, if you have the certificate, do we do different things? We're all still planning on that, but this goes a long way to helping us know who the most qualified are. So
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really the whole goal. And again, just to say this again, and we should be proud of it because we never know how long anything's going to last. But we're probably the only state in in the United States that's doing the kind of work that we're doing for families with diverse language experiences. And so, we have a lot to be proud of. Because this is very rare. And, we might be a blip in the cosmic experience of the universe. We don't know. So we should just be thankful that we have this opportunity to create opportunities for families whose assets are based on a rich language culture that is not English. I mean, everyone, has this whole thing about the advantages of learning English, and that's true. In Europe, that's one of the primary things. A couple of years ago when I was in Spain, we had someone who would come to the place where I was, and she said, "Well, let me practice my English on you because I have to pass this exam to be proficient in English." And her Spanish was wonderful. It was in Sevilla, Spain. So you have people in Europe, whose educational systems know the value of having multiple languages. Most people in Europe, they speak Spanish, they speak French, they speak German, Italian, Portuguese, and then that we have, these monolingual speakers like myself, who's only an English speaker for all kinds of reasons that I won't get into. And we have the advantage of being advocates for multilingual learners. I mean, it's a great privilege. Bev and I know this for sure, that we're in a position that's a rare position to be in, and we're grateful for that. And we're grateful to each of you. So I just want to thank all of you, and say that no matter what happens and what challenges we face, we're always stronger together. And this has been, a very deeply moving experience for me to be with you, on these Wednesday evenings. And thank you for taking the time away from your family for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to close now if there are no more questions. And if you want to stay on just for a little bit, Bev and I will hang around if you just have a personal thing you want to say or you have a question.
Christelle, sorry.
But
This is Sonia. Can I just make a comment or two?
Sure, Sonia.
Thank you. First, I wanted to speak to Ruben's question about studying or training, what have you, in the summer. So I wanted to remind everybody there's that special ed terminology list is a great thing to study throughout the summer because IEP meetings are always going to happen. And how great to be able to come back in the fall and be armed with that terminology a little bit more. So there's always that long list of terminology that can be studied throughout the summer. And then I just want everyone to know that you to give yourself more credit. We're all intellectual, smart individuals, and if we know the English language, and I'm not saying be perfect at it, but if we know the English language and we know the most popular language that our students and families are, which is Spanish, then we should be okay. I know it's easy to feel inadequate, but we have to feel confident. We have to feel confident in interpreting for our students and families. And thanks to, of course, training like this can help us even be more professional. So we're armed with this type of training. We just need to be, I think, give ourselves more credit and feel confident. When I interpret, I specifically ask both parties, please be sure to be brief so I can, in your phrases, so I can interpret. You can ask that. You know, I mean, do you really want to memorize a paragraph that they say? No, it doesn't have to be that way. We can call the shots, and in the sense of asking for that type of request, which is not difficult, and everybody, every time I've asked that, has no problem at all. So anyway, I just want to wish everybody good luck as we are now, you know, with this additional knowledge that we have, and that we can do it. And there's things in life, last comment, there's things in life that we can fake it till we make it, but this is one that we do not and cannot do that. In other words, we have to be pretty accurate and professional and transparent. And I think it was mentioned before, these families, administrators, and individuals, teachers, they will respect us for what we do. Because we have been transparent with them up front at the beginning. So I just wanted to hopefully empower everybody to move forward.
Thanks, Sonia.
Mm-hmm.
So is it Suzanne? I see your hand up. And then Evelyn.
Rocio. Can you hear me, Krista?
Yes,
So, with all of the Zoom meetings that have been, you know, here, you always were mentioning something really important.
Oh.
That was my mistake. I can't hear you now because I was going to put your hand down, but now it's muted. So can you unmute yourself?
Okay, now? Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you.
yes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank
No,
you.
it's my fault. My fault.
So, so in all of the time you were mentioning something like when if we are no one how let me try to figure out the right word to say this is that if we are not understanding what either one trying to say, you know, we have to ask, okay, so you know, I'm sorry, I cannot find the words. Anyways, but so that is helping us to feel confident, you know, because the practice, every time that we are doing this kind of stuff, you know, and saying, okay, we don't understand. We've been really honest, you know, it's part of the integrity, you know, to say, I don't know these things. Can explain to me so I can do it better. So most likely, like lately, we will be knowing how to deal with these situations. Make sense? So it's practicing, and so and it's good to know that we can get confident with this allowance, you know, to do all of this kind of stuff that we are having rights to have mistakes because we are learning. It's a process of learning, and that is important. That everybody knows that before before the meeting. I am learning. This is my first time, or this is my second time. So allow me to have mistakes. So that is perfect, perfect, because it's helping you, even with your self-esteem. That's my thing.
Yes, thank you so
Thank you.
much. I think you're welcome. Evelyn?
Thank you. And Christelle, I just wanted to say what some people put on the chat already, and thank you also for your time and sharing these afternoons with all of us. And thank you to all the people that are taking their time also to write do the work and do the homework, and we are able to go and check. And thank you for the samples that you have sent us via email, because they have really helped me to understand how I was afraid to put too much or try to put my experiences, but you made it so clear that we really appreciate that. And congratulate everybody that does this work, because not everybody can do it. And I am a witness of that. I have a 24-year-old that tried to do it with my mom. My mom was on a phone conversation, and she was like, help me, tell them this, and that in Spanish. And he was able to say it in English, but then he wasn't able to tell her they were saying in Spanish. And he was like, I don't know how you do it. So we really have, like Sonia said, we really have to be proud of this ability that we have. And with all the materials that we have in Canvas right now, myself, I have a lot of things that I can go through, all the videos in YouTube. I was concerned about the different dates, but if I do it over and over again, I know I'm going to build that confidence that we always need. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I just want to say we have a really interesting family. The father is a paraeducator at Utah International Charter School, and last year, and he's Nepalese. His family is from Nepal. And it's so wonderful because now I think his daughter, who's now in the university, and his sister is taking the course to be certified. So we have, the majority has been Spanish, but then we have, wonderful families and wonderful people who, they were in the army in Afghanistan, and they know 3 or 4 languages. So that's the other thing. And in this course, just to let you know, we have a wonderful, wonderful woman from Washington County who's a paraeducator, and her language is Navajo, which is really important because it's not really a written language. And the Navajo code talkers that won World War II for us, I just want you to think about them and appreciate them, because their names have been scrubbed from the Arlington website and the Smithsonian website. So you'll never know that Chuck Foster's father was a code talker in World War II. And because it's, a spoken language, it wasn't like the Turing machine and they could figure out what code it was, because the people who were not our allies, couldn't speak Navajo. So the person from Washington County who's being an interpreter in Navajo has my deepest respect, as well as other indigenous languages that we want, so that we have, elders with oral languages from native tribes from our, they were here way before most of us were here. And so to respect them and their language is really important. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now, and anyone who wants to, Bev, do you want to say something?
One more prop. Everyone here, speaking from the districts that you support And Christelle is an advocate all the time for not only you, but our students, our people in the districts trying to do their best to support students that need the support, right? And it never stops with Christelle. Just putting that out there. Everything you're seeing right now and what you've seen in this course is from the heart and just who she is. So anyway, and by the way, next week is her birthday, so maybe send some birthday wishes next week. Just saying, put that out there too.
Thanks. Well, I appreciate that. I'm still young. I'm 78. 2 more years, I'll be 80. My intention is to be a thorn in everybody's side until, you know, I'm under the ground. So still an advocate, still tough, you know, and committed to all of you and each of you and to all of our children. So thank you so much from my, you know, my deepest appreciation for each of you. Thank you.